On this 25th anniversary of Videobardo, it is my great pleasure to celebrate the world's longest running video poetry festival. Like many artists, I have a special relationship with the festival. It was a privilege to be in Buenos Aires for the 2008 and the 2014 Videobardo. Driving through the city, I will always remember the welcoming sight and scent of the blue jacaranda trees with the voice of Javier Robledo beside me. This year I'm here to join the hundreds of poets, filmmakers, and video poets in congratulating all the wonderful people at Videobardo for this accomplishment. Tonight I would like to make a small contribution to show my appreciation by dedicating my video poem Hopscotch or Rayuela to the 25th edition of Videobardo. It is one of my favorite video poems, not because poetry is playful like a game of Rayuela, or because it bears the title of a novel by the Argentine writer Julio Cortázar, but that it features the type of aesthetic solutions I like to see, specifically for pre-existing poems. 25 years ago, my new book of poems was Sleepwalking Among the Camels. It was a selected book of poems, which means that it included a selection from my previous 3 books plus some new poems. And it was among these new poems written close to 25 years ago that the poem Hopscotch was first presented in print. The poem combines the shape of the Rayuela with a difference. Words were substituted for the orderly numbers 1 to 9, producing a short one-line poem, what we call an aphorism, a statement conveying some sort of truth in a direct manner, a statement that can only be made by words, not by images, an observation I made in a tweet in 2014. What images can describe best is best left to the image. Text is for that which cannot be expressed except by the use of text. What interested me was the substitution of words for numbers. Of course, there is the effect of a concrete poem where the shape resembles the object described, a rayuela, but also it was what the formalists, los formalistas, would call defamiliarization or estrangement, finding something unexpected and strange where something had been common and ordinary, finding a new context, un nuevo contexto, for a poem where you would not expect it, in the squares drawn on the sidewalk with chalk. These 9 words summarize the human being's function in the world, answering the question, why are we here? Jump through hoops for love, money, power, until death. Salta a través de aros, por amor, por dinero, por poder, hasta la muerta. Perhaps the Spanish translation is not perfect, because jump through hoops is an English idiom for performing a task as if it was a children's game, like jumping from one square to another, or a circus trick, like tigers jumping through rings of fire. Except this is not a children's game, this rayuela. To win in this game that is made possible with words is to win the 3 most important goals or prizes in the world: love, money, or power, until the end of one's life. It is a metaphor for how we live out our lives. It was 25 years ago that I decided to turn this poem into a video poem. I had my own video production company, and I was fortunate to have a technical crew with whom I worked long hours in the production of TV documentaries, commercials, promotional, educational videos, even music videos. For music videos, we would often shoot in 16mm film. At that particular time, I learned that we had some 16mm film, black and white film, that I could use for a couple of short video poems. I felt like Robert Downey Jr.'s father, who had worked for an advertising agency during the week and who shot the famous film Putney Swope on the weekends with an amateur cast and 35mm film stock he borrowed from the ad agency's inventory. One of my favorite films. So we enlisted a 14-year-old Linda Chow to perform the role of the principal character in this video poem version of Hopscotch that I was going to use for a TV commercial for a Vancouver art show. It had to be exactly 60 seconds to be considered for a public service announcement that was free to Vancouver artists. We found a perfect location behind a local school. The video begins with the young girl approaching a hopscotch game. It's a wide shot. She's alone and she has a stone in her hand to throw the first shot. She hops her way to the end, turns, and begins to hop her way back to the beginning. Halfway through, she bends down to pick up the stone she threw. Here, for the first time, we witness something strange, out of the ordinary. It is a close-up, and the action continues in slow motion. I interpret this as being forced to experience an intensified perceptual encounter with this version of Hopscotch, this video poem, as an art object. It is not only a visual experience. As we follow the close-up through the hopping process, we also hear something out of the ordinary. There is a prolonged growl, the growl from a source that has no reason to be part of the moment. It is a growl of a tiger. Is it the same tiger that is asked to jump through the ring of fire? At the very least, it's a threatening sound, challenging the familiar norm of how we read a scene in a film or a video. The perception of something to be feared is forced upon the viewer. It does not belong in the traditional world of playing the game. It is an intentional gesture on the part of the poet to introduce a moment of defamiliarization. The three devices, close-up, slow motion, and the growl of a tiger, combine to produce this moment as a break with the norm, with the normal, a break with perceiving the everyday game of hopscotch as only a game. With these three devices, the poetic experience introduces the idea that this game is symbolic of something greater. Normally, the game is played back and forth, from 1 to 10 and back again. The game depends on continuous action. A stone is thrown, the jumps resume. When our character returns to the starting position, before she throws the second stone, instead of the numbers 1 to 10, she perceives the words of the pre-existing poem, Hopscotch. Using the tools of cinema to approximate the experience of reading, we perceive the words and read the words as if we were hopping from one square to another. Each image is a word that leads to the next. The game of hopscotch has become completely defamiliarized. It is a forced perception, an intentional gesture by the artist to bring our attention to a series of images that are in fact words, images that have the shape of the game rayuela, but whose content, single words, do not belong with the everyday game of hopscotch. The desire and expectation of seeing numbers whose significance is limited to a sequential order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, is suppressed and exchanged for words that suggest what the art critic Clive Bell called significant form, a significant observation of how we lead our lives. Before she throws the second stone, before the words come to their conclusion, the last word, the narrative sequence, is broken by the sound of a horn. She turns back toward the sound. It is the sound of a ram's horn attracting her attention, calling her away from the game which she is reluctant to leave. The pre-existing poem has changed. It has also become defamiliarized. Like the game, the statement of the pre-existing poem has been cut short. The last word has not been revealed. She obeys the call of the ram's horn, but as a gesture of her reluctance to leave the game, she throws the stone even if she can't see the result. Differentiating between a game and a poem and a video poem, is a story. The story is a narrative that does not fully represent the pre-existing poem. The statement is cut off before she throws the final stone. And it does not fully represent the game rayuela, which has exchanged its everyday common numbers with the words of a statement that does not allow for returning, from hopping back from the final word to the beginning. At the end, we are left alone. The principal character has turned and ran away from the game. We are alone to witness that not only did she succeed in throwing the stone into the last square, but it landed in the almost impossible center of the letter A, the middle letter of the last word of the poem, which is death. We are left alone with the knowledge of that statement. We are left alone with the message of that sentence. To conclude, I would like to remember the Czech linguist and literary theorist Roman Jakobson. He was the one who identified that one function of a message is the poetic function. It was to focus on the message for its own sake. It was also 100 years ago, in 1921, that he introduced the term literariness to explain what makes poetry poetry, what makes art art. He used this word as a way that literariness revitalizes human perception, which had been paralyzed by the everyday of everyday life. I hope that in Hopscotch, La Rayuela, in the form of a video poem, our perception also has been revitalized.